on, everyone? Welcome back into the Seawolves City Podcast. My name is Evan Giddings, broadcast assistant with your Erie Seawolves, AA affiliate of the Detroit Tigers, and we are happy to have you joining us for Episode 5. Coming to you before Erie takes on the Trenton Thunder later on this evening over at Arm & Hammer Park, a part of an 8-game road trip split into 7 days, and evenly between the Thunder from Trenton and, lastly, the Reading Fightin' Phils. Myself, along with your voice of the Seawolves and Assistant General Manager Greg Gagne, are proud to be keeping these episodes coming to you all season long from Game 1 through 140. Getting these to you now once a week, so if you have any suggestions on players you'd like to hear from, topics you'd like to be discussed, or any general conversations you'd like to have, we are all ears. Please go check out the Seawolves on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and also our team website, seawolves.com. to find great deals on tickets, group outings, and spectacular promotions, such as every Monday night Buck Night, Kids Eat Free Tuesdays, AAA Member Wednesdays, Friday night giveaways, our beach towel coming up during the next homestand at UPMC Park, Saturday night fireworks, and of course, Kids Cruise Sundays. You can follow myself at eGiddings10 and find Greg at Greg Gagne on Twitter. And of course, listen in all season long to your Seawolves on Fox Sports Radio and 1330 The Fan, the TuneIn app, and of course, watching on MILB.TV. As always, we jump into our Seawolves of the Roundtable discussion with Greg, along with Erie Times and Seawolves beat writer Tom Reisenweber, to discuss the last homestand, finally one that feels longer than 3 or 4 games. Unfortunately, a 2-4 homestand, 6-game split evenly between Akron along with Altoona, but a lot going on in between the lines that we'll break down, and we'll also whip out the crystal ball and give some nearing the end of the first half predictions as we prepare for the second 70 games of 2019. All that and much more, so without further ado, let's get right into it. Episode 5 of the Seawolves City Podcast.
And welcome on in, everyone. We're here at the home broadcast booth at UPMC Park, and it's time for our latest edition of the Seawolves City Podcast. Greg Gagne alongside my broadcast partner, Evan Giddings, and beat writer extraordinaire of the Erie Seawolves for GoErie.com and the Erie Times News, Tom Reisenweber. Well, gentlemen, wrapping up a 6-game homestand. We're recording this on Wednesday after the morning game for Friday consumption by the masses. And don't forget to stick around later in this show, as Evan will have an exhilarating conversation with Casey Mize. And this might be the most well-listened to podcast that we put out there with Casey on top.
Certainly hope so.
But so the Seawolves, they come back from the road trip. They split an abbreviated 2-game series with Reading. They come home, and they take 2 of 3 from Akron, won the opening game of the series, lost game 1 of a doubleheader on Sunday. And then I think what we all thought was probably the biggest win of the season, and when Erie really looked to be turning the corner, they came from behind to beat Akron in game 2 of the doubleheader. They notched their first doubleheader win of the year, and they also had their first extra innings win of the season. And I think everybody was looking around like, okay, this team's won 5 of 7 ball games. Now you turn your attention to the Altoona series. Had a big lead late, and then things just seemingly fell apart at the end of game 1 of that series. Altoona gained the momentum, and Erie could just never bounce back, and they were shut out in the middle of the game of the series, then lost on Wednesday to the Curve 6-2, suffering their second home sweep of the season. So it looked like it was going to be a great homestand, turned into Erie going 2-4.
And I think that game 1 really set the tone for this series. It was a game in which Erie led by 4 runs at one point in the later innings. Altoona went on to score eventually 6 unanswered runs, and from then on, they just kind of lost their mojo. They, as you talked about, found it during that 3-game series against Akron, especially in the final game when they trailed the whole way, went down 2-1 into the final 7th inning, and Cody Eves delivered the solo home run to tie the game again in the 9th inning with a triple, and then hit the 3-run walk-off home run. You felt like this was a team that was on the verge of turning the page, especially in the month of June, which is around the time in which you begin to see guys hit their stride. The repetitions have finally set in. You've seen a team a couple of times. But that just wasn't the case. And I really think it's because of Game 1 and how demoralizing that loss was that they weren't able to come out the next day and have the same type of flair. We saw them, again, fall in clutch positions. And of the last 2 games of the series, they went 1 for 17 with runners in scoring position. Now, that was a situation and a case that we saw earlier in the month of May, but they sort of wiggled their way out of it, and especially against top-notch competition like Hartford and Reading, played better in those series on the road. But here against Altoona and a team that they have now seen a total of 13 times, they just have not been able to figure it out, and I'm not exactly sure what it is. If you look at their numbers, they're the top 5 in most offensive categories. The pitching and the ERA has suffered because of a couple of, really astronomical numbers in games. A couple of rain delays, the doubleheaders have amounted, and as a result, the numbers aren't as flashy as they once were. But the pitching staff is still very good. The starters give you quality starts each and every night, and the offense in clutch spots isn't able to come up with the big knock. I was just looking at their numbers with runners in scoring position and 2 outs. They're hitting 185 as a club. And not to say that those are the only situations which they can score, but it seems like whenever they've gotten base runners on, and typically in scoring position, it's been with 1 out and with 2 outs, and they haven't been able to execute. And this also is a team that hasn't demonstrated the ability to bunt guys over, to steal bases, so you're essentially relying on consecutive hits in an inning, and it just hasn't gone their way.
Tom, you had brought up the stat before we started recording today, from that point where they scored 8 runs on Monday night in the series against the Curve. What were the runners in scoring position stats for the series after that?
Yeah, after that rest of the game, they were 0 for 5. Then, Tuesday 0 for 9, and then Wednesday was 1 for 12, I think. So it's been rough. It's almost a tough situation because you fall apart Monday night and the game's over. Then you got to come back for a 10:30 game, and you get the hits. You just can't get the clutch hits. So they couldn't get any guys, in right scoring position. Then you come back Wednesday. Okay, we got Alex Vallejo on the mound. Then the rain hits, and you're down 2-1 when you go in the clubhouse. You got to think about it. They ended up with 12 hits on Wednesday, 6 extra base hits, but only 2 led to runs, because one was a home run and one was a leadoff triple. So they're really just trying to find that clutch hit. And talking to Mike Rebello after Wednesd's game, he's like, we need that day off more than anything right now, and they off on Thursday, and maybe they can regroup and go on the road. Maybe it's good to get out of town and get away from the home crowd a little bit, just to kind of regroup and not have that much pressure on you. But right now they're scuffling, and it's tough because they're getting the hits, just not the clutch hits.
Yeah, this was a team that came into that Altoona series with the 3rd best home mark in the entire league at 17-12. You don't expect them to come home and get swept by an Altoona team who lost 9 of 11 coming into that series. They were lit up by their manager, Michael Ryan, before coming to Erie. And for some reason, they have just had Erie's number. Over the past 2 series, Erie has gone 1-5 against the Curve, a team they had started out very hot against. And one of the things that Evan and I had touched on in the Wednesday broadcast was, while Altoona is a team that it seems like when they see a team 2nd, 3rd, 4th time in the season, they have made the adjustments, whereas on the flip side, the Seawolves seem to be a team that can dominate early season series, and then when they see a team for the 2nd, 3rd, or 4th time, they tend to struggle. We saw that with Bowie, where they took 8 of the first 10 and then scuffled down the stretch. They won the first 2 series against the Curve, have lost the last 2. Swept Trent, or took 2 of 3 from Trenton to start the season. Were swept in Trenton the most recent time they were there. So you're trying to figure out what it is about this club that first time through they seem to be lights out, and then the next time through, they can't seem to come up with big clutch hits.
And you wonder how much it wears on the team when they see guys on base all the time and can't drive them in. Throughout 3 games like that, if you start kind of losing the confidence a little bit, that you can't come up with that clutch hit. So, yeah, you don't know what's going to take to turn things around. They have a ton of games coming up these next 3 weeks going into the All-Star break with makeup doubleheaders and suspended games. So they have to really kind of figure something out on the road here because it can get real bad real quick.
Yeah, and this is not an easy road trip for the Seawolves, which will start tonight against the Trenton Thunder, a team that swept Erie the last time at Arm & Hammer Park. It's a situation where you've got 4 against Trenton, a very good team. Trenton is at the top of the Eastern Division, and a game and a half back of Trenton in a second-place tie are the Reading Fightin' Phils. And so it's an 8-game road trip for the Seawolves in the span of 7 days that is really pivotal if they want to have any shot. And who knows? The first half might be a lost cause at this point. But if you can at least finish strong and come up with a second-place position, that sets you up for the second half because at the end of the day, with Harrisburg as good as they have been all season long, if Harrisburg runs away with the second half, then it's going to go to that second-best record in the division. So while it might not be as important for catching Harrisburg in the end of the first half, it is important to rack up as many wins as you can in case you're in a position late in the season where you're fighting for that second playoff spot.
And I also think that one thing that stood out to me about this particular group is that it seemed like they've played better against the top-notch teams. They've put more competitive efforts against a team like Trenton. Even though they lost in all 3 games at Arm & Hammer Park, all of them were within 2 runs. Against Hartford, they took 2 of 3 at Dunkin' Donuts Park after coming off a 4-game sweep. Against Reading, they had a series split, and in Game 1, did not look themselves, was able to bounce back in Game 2. Against Akron, they've taken both two of those series from the second-place team. They haven't faced Harrisburg yet. So this is a team that plays to their level of competition as we've seen so far. It's just been unfortunate that they've had most of their contests against the bottom dwellers in each of the respective divisions. And it seems like when they come into town, it isn't like Erie, as a team that takes days off or looks ahead, but I just feel like their opponent brings out the best in them, or in some cases the worst. And that's what we saw against Altoona, a team that, as you mentioned, lost, I think it was 2 of 8 coming into the series.
9 of 11 overall.
9 of 11 overall. And Altoona was looking to flip the script. They were able to do so. Erie couldn't get on track. And you hope now that with the off day, a chance for the bullpen, most importantly, to get an extra day's rest and replenish those arms on the back end, that they can go into Arm & Hammer Park and basically play with reckless abandonment. They have nothing to lose at this point. This is arguably one of the lower points of their season so far, and the only way it can go is up.
One of the things that we had looked at it during the broadcast on Wednesday was the fact with the player movement. And last season, Erie had 139 player moves. That was the most in franchise history. And at the end of last week, they were already at 62, a couple of more moves this week. It has been a lack of consistency on the roster. And one of the things that Evan pointed out, which I didn't really take into account, when the team was playing well in April, it was a consistent team in that clubhouse every night. You had a couple of guys going up and down, but it's not to the level that we saw in the month of May. Heck, there was that one stretch when Richmond came to town. I think Erie made, it was something like 14 or 16 moves in a span of 3 days. I guess the question is, how do you get any type of consistency? And even out of the bullpen, where we've seen that inconsistency probably brighter than any other spot on this team, and it's not been a bright spot, but it's been a glaring spot for them with the inconsistencies down there. How do you form any kind of consistency where you don't know where you're going to be playing the next day?
Yeah, especially, it takes a toll on these guys just traveling, going back and forth from Lakeland and Toledo, just trying to get comfortable and get somewhere to live and stuff like that. It's just tough for them. And really, these guys in the bullpen, they have throwing programs. They want to throw on certain days, and that gets all screwed up with so much travel and change. So you guys, they've done a good job so far for what they've been dealt, but it's just tough to, every day, it seems like there's a new arm or someone's gone in that bullpen.
And I also want to make a point. I think it's important, and we've seen this from a couple other bullpens that have been statistically strong, most notably Hartford. Guys have established roles in that bullpen, and I don't think that that's something that Erie has had so far. Now, granted, a lot of it has been due to some of the inconsistency, but even example, a guy like Will Vest, who prior to the series against Altoona had made 3 consecutive saves, had been perfect in that role. They bring him in the 9th inning against Altoona in Game 1. He gives up 5 runs. And that essentially resets everything in the bullpen because you don't have the confidence to go to him once more. And with guys essentially being put in different positions each and every night, whether it be a middle relief, tail end, they're throwing multiple innings, they're throwing 1 inning, they're throwing 2/3 of an inning, it's tough to find a rhythm. And although if you ask any guy down in that bullpen, they'll tell you, hey, we're ready for any type of spot, we're ready to go. But mentally, it's tough to reset every single time. As opposed to when you have a role, you know that you're the setup man. You know that you're the closer. You know what spots you're going to be used in, whether it be left versus right, or coming in with runners in scoring position and nobody out, runners in scoring position with 2 outs. You have an idea of what you can do, and you're put in a position to succeed. I don't think we've seen that so far with the Erie bullpen, and whether it be due to performance or utilization or roster moves, that may be something to keep an eye on.
That's something, and eventually we'll probably have Dave Littlefield on the podcast at some point. That's something we should probably ask him about, defining roles in the organization when it comes to the pitching. And, I had someone ask me the other day, I was on another radio show, about, who's the closer for Erie? And I said, well, I didn't really have an answer because they just don't have one. And that has been the case the last couple of years. But you even look at a guy like Joe Jimenez when he was here a couple of years ago. He had that defined role as the closer when he was here. But then he gets called up to the big leagues, and then he's used in the late relief role, not in that closer role. Now, obviously, when you get to the big leagues, you have established closers, so you're not expecting guys to come from AA or AAA and go right into that. But it's still that defined role that you just don't see a lot of with, and that's not just Erie. There are a lot of organizations that don't have those defined roles, But as Evan said, you look at what Hartford's been able to do this season with their pitching staff, and that's exactly what it is. It is defined roles of who's pitching the 6th, who's pitching the 7th, who's pitching the 8th, and who's pitching the 9th. They have a couple guys that can go to those late innings, but they have the same closer on a nightly basis, and he goes out there and mows hitters down.
Yeah, and I think you see it throughout the entire team, too. Other than maybe Derek Hill leading off, there's no consistency as far as who's going to hit where, and even the infielders are shuffling around, playing different positions. And maybe that's the Tigers' way of doing things to make guys available and used to different roles like that. But it's tough to settle in as a player, not only in the field or in the bullpen, to not really know what's going to happen that following day.
You bring up a great point with the lineup, and you say Derek Hill is a guy that's been leading off just about every day. That is an interesting dynamic in the minor leagues right now, where basically big league organizations are telling the minor league managers and coaches where to hit guys in the lineup. And it's almost like the managers have so much less control than they did even 5 years ago when making out a lineup. And now it's, well, hey, this guy needs X amount of at-bats and he needs to play this position so many times, and this guy needs to be in this position so many times. So it's interesting to see the sort of dynamic that has been happening in the minor leagues in recent years with the roles of the manager and how they are able to actually manage the game. It's almost like the manager has become a facilitator for what the big league club wants to see.
I mean, we've seen it in the lineup. Really, the only guy aside from Derek Hill who we've seen in the same spot every single day is Isaac Paredes. Mm-hmm. He's generally in the 2-hole. And even Derek Hill, because of his struggles, hit just 158 in the month of May, hasn't been able to, I think, really form any sort of consistency at the plate. I mean, a guy like Cam Gibson is, I think, hit in 5 or 6 different spots in the lineup, and you're getting pitched differently every single time you go in there. Now, I know that they're trying to find different spots for these hitters to eventually put them in position to succeed, but occasionally I think you need just a week or two span where say, hey, you're going to hit in the 7-hole, you're going to hit in the 3-hole, and we're going to see what you do. And I think that may help the lineup because you're coming in different spots with different guys on base. And right now, manager Mike Grabello is being essentially forced to ride the hot hand. Tom's going to like this one. Cole Peterson right now, who began a week ago, batting in the 9-hole, because he's been hitting so well, has basically been moved up to the 5 spot. That's what we saw on Wednesday afternoon against Altoona. And this is a guy that's hitting well, but does he project as a 5-hole hitter in the future? Probably not. But right now, Grabello is forced to put him in that spot because no one else is producing. So I think once we see perhaps the hitting come around, you'll see hitters settle into roles, and that will allow them to eventually put up numbers.
Tom, have you remembered in recent years a scenario where, and don't get me wrong, there is some offensive talent on this Erie club, but it has almost been like a month and 5-day team-wide slump?
Yeah, really. It's been a struggle, and you can't really look at maybe one hitter and say, you know what, they're gonna get hit in a situation. It's been tough, and over the last 6-7 years, there have been stretches. I don't know if it's been this long of a stretch. There's always been one or two guys that have kept things going and really had a breakout game or two. Maybe today was it, or Wednesday was it, with Josh Lester with 3 hits. We'll see how he can carry that on. But yeah, it's been a tough thing because we talked about to these players that hitting is contagious, but it's also the opposite effect, and these guys are really struggling and scuffling right now.
So the Trenton series that begins, we're filming this Wednesday, but we'll say tonight because this is going to air on Friday. Casey Mize on the mound for the Seawolves, and he's going to be making another start. He's 5-0 with a 1.21 ERA, and I think everyone is at a point now where they're wondering, how much longer Casey's going to be here. You have Casey Mize on Friday night, Matt Manning on Saturday night, and it's a situation where these guys might not be here much longer.
These guys, are all pitching really well. Casey Mize, I was looking through the records. I don't believe there's been a starting pitcher in Erie Seagulls history to start 7-0. There was a reliever who went 7-0, but I think Jeremy Johnson started 6-0 at one point. So he's on historic ground here if he can win these next couple starts. And like you said, I don't think he'll be here much longer. You go away from wins and losses. His stuff is just so good that why keep him here if he's dominating Double-A? Let's see what he can do against Triple-A. No one wants to see him go. We all love watching him pitch. It's great to watch him just as a fan of baseball, but I don't think it's going to be lasting much longer here.
I do think that, and when this team comes out of the slump that it is, it would benefit him to play for this group as opposed to Toledo, which right now is out of the running. And allowing him to grow with this clubhouse would benefit him mentally. But physically, we've seen what he's done against Double-A batters, and early in the season, you could make the argument that, hey, he's doing it twice against Bowie. Altoona faced them a couple times. Teams that aren't necessarily in the upper echelon of offensive categories. But in his last couple of starts, last time out he faced Akron, which was the hottest team in terms of hitting in the month of May. Hartford before that, and that's not exactly a tough place to pitch. He's gone up and dominated lineups across the Eastern League, and if he does it again tonight against Trenton, who is at the top of the Eastern Division and is at the top of the Eastern League in terms of hitting, and then Reading the next time out, and we've seen their offensive outburst, it's kind of hard to justify him still being here. Even though I think it could help him in the long term, there's just not much to challenge him.
Yeah, it's going to be a good test for Mize on the road trip. You have his first start will be on Friday against Trenton, and then he'll start later in the road trip against a Reading team in a very tough ballpark to pitch in, similar to UPMC Park with the way the ball travels. But at First Energy Stadium in Reading, that is a notorious home run hitter's ballpark. So, Casey, that's going to be a good challenge for him, barring that he's still here by the time we get to Reading. But, it's going to be a good challenge for him on the road trip. Two teams that he has not faced before. And we'll see how he comes out and pitches against those two clubs. But I agree with you, Evan. You'd love to, and what you said, Tom, you'd love to see him stick around here a lot longer. But if he's not being challenged, then at what point do you say he's not developing because he's just mowing people down?
Yeah, I think what also helps is he's helping Matt Manning. Yeah, you see Matt Manning go out there the day after Casey, and he's got that really competitive edge. Not that he didn't have it before, but I think there's a little extra kind of oomph that he wants to match what Casey's doing. And he leads the league now, 80 strikeouts, and is having a great year so far. And we don't know how long he'll be here. Erie's never had a league leader in strikeouts after the season. We missed it by one with Warwick Soppold. So we'll see if Matt Manning can stay here long enough to win that title. But I think just having Mize right in front of him is that little extra boost. If he's pitching behind him, maybe not the same kind of thing. But you have that 1-2 punch, and they look like they really want to kind of match each other every time out.
So let's do a little crystal ball time here. First half ends in just a couple of weeks. Where do you see this going for this team?
It's going to be very interesting because the first half ends, and there's that stretch of 5 games at Binghamton in 3 days. There's all kinds of makeups coming up before the All-Star break. So I think that 3-week period is going to be crucial. It's the start of the second half, then you go into a break at some point. I would think at some point they got to start hitting with runner in scoring position. And once they do, this team's going to start winning. It's just a matter of how long can they hang on to these starting pitchers and if they go up or not.
I think because of the amount of talent that's on this team and the amount of youth as well, that if this team can get on a roll, they could rattle off 12 wins in 15 games. This is a team that could get hot very quickly, which we saw to begin the season. They also have been in an extended slump, and I think that there are two sides to that coin. If we see, like Tom was talking about, this team begin to find its mojo and find those clutch base hits, I think they're a team that feeds off one another. And to your point about Mize, not only does he elevate Manning, I think he elevates the rest of the staff. And this is a young group, pitching and hitting, that really follows the lead of one another. It's just a matter of someone taking the first step. So if they're able to do that with a lot of games condensed into a small amount of time, you could see them quickly come from behind and perhaps challenge. I don't know about the first half because Harrisburg has built too big of a lead, but if they're able to, around that first half mark, generate some momentum, pick up wins, build their confidence, I wouldn't be surprised even if Mize or Manning and Fido possibly are not around for much of the second half, that this is a team that could still compete for a second half and playoff berth.
Final thought here, guys, and it's something I've been doing this for a long time now. I've been broadcasting baseball since 2003. I don't think, and you brought this up, Evan, about the potential for an extended run, and we've seen the extended slumps at times, but I don't think I've ever watched a ball club quite like Erie in the sense that they can't seem to get on a roll one way or another. And usually you see teams rattle off a 12 of 15 or an 8 of 10, and that just hasn't been the case. It's been the win 3, lose 4, win 4, lose 2 mentality of this club all season long. I think part of that probably is the inconsistency in the roster. Part of it is probably inconsistencies with the offense and the bullpen. But have you ever seen anything like this before where you have not seen or have seen a stretch like this in the minor leagues with covering the team all these years?
No, you even look at what the last 500 team was, 2014, and that's when they built a huge deficit and came back up and got hot at the end. In the last couple of years, this team has been bad enough where you lose 3, you win 1 kind of thing, and then below 500, that's the season. Yeah, it's a tug and pull kind of thing right now, where every time they make some progress, take a step back, and I'm not sure what they need to do to break through and make that consistent where they win all the time, but something's got to change if they want to make a run at this thing.
Yeah, consistency is a big thing, and I had a scout tell me once if all these guys were consistent in what they did, they'd be in the big leagues right now. So that's my final thought, but it's going to be interesting to watch down the stretch of the first half. And again, I think every win is important because Harrisburg doesn't seem to be showing any signs of slowing up, and so it might be a battle for that second playoff spot by who has the best overall record other than Harrisburg when it's all said and done. That'll wrap up our roundtable discussion on this week's episode of the Seawolf City Podcast. Big-time interview coming up with Casey Mize and Evan Giddings. They sat down. It seemed like they talked for about 2 hours. You're going to have to condense that into about a half hour, so we'll see what Evan does with his magic editing skills. But for Tom Reisenweber, Evan Giddings, I'm Greg Gagne. This is the Erie Seawolf City Podcast.
So a big thanks, as always, to Greg and Tom for staying a little later after Wednesday's initial morning game, then turned into an afternoon game by an hour and 39-minute rain delay. But our guys continue to go the extra mile to make sure we break down the past week of Seawolves baseball. And speaking of guys who have gone the extra mile in 2019, we turn our attention towards the main events, the talk of the town, the talk of Tiger Town, the pièce de résistance, whatever other high-quality synonyms you'd like to describe the one and the only Casey Mize. Not really much introduction necessary here, but I want to highlight a couple of things that I particularly enjoyed and that you will hear in our conversation. First of all, for a guy that seems to have his day planned down to a T, I was not expecting to get him in a room for more than 10 minutes, which is what I initially asked for, and he graciously obliged. But then he went above and beyond. We chatted for nearly 30 minutes discussing topics like the fine line between competing and developing. And of course, for all of his faithful Auburn supporters out there, he reveals his greatest accomplishment as a Tiger and even gives a shout out to this current group trying to make a run at the College World Series. We talk about how the game has evolved both technologically and analytically, and how he uses that to fine-tune and improve an already dominating pitching arsenal. For all the music fans, Casey reveals what's on his feel-good pregame playlist, and for all those Game of Thrones lovers, makes his choice for the character best suited to sit on the Iron Throne. All of that and much more coming up on this week's conversation with Erie Seawolves starting pitcher, Casey Mize. Welcome back into the Seawolf City Podcast, Episode 5, and Evan Giddings pleased to be joined now by none other than starting pitcher for the Erie Seawolves, Casey Mize. Casey, thank you so much for coming on, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be on.
Well, we're already into the month of June, and this is about the time where you see guys start to really hit their stride. You know, get the reps in, the sun starts coming out, the weather begins to warm, especially around the Eastern League. And the character of a particular team is revealed. What have you seen from this group of guys?
It's been really good. We have a lot of fun together. That's kind of been something that I've enjoyed so far. We got some clowns in the clubhouse, and it's just a really good environment. And I've been impressed, with the pitching staff. I think we got a good group. That's kind of been the talk of our team is our starters and our pitching staff. But I've been really impressed with our relievers as well. Like, we had a bullpen day with a doubleheader. Matt started the first game, and then we had to piece it together in the second game, and our bullpen did a really great job. So I've been impressed with them, and then our bats are, coming along. I think, they've been putting together and, battling and putting us in a position to win. I mean, Cody Eves had a great day yesterday. He's up to AAA now, but he's been a good one for us, and along with a bunch of others. So I've just been impressed, mainly with just how much fun we have, and just being able to put ourselves in position to win games.
Well, and that's what I was going to ask, because everyone is always talking about the big three and whatnot, and there's a lot more substance to just the headlines from this team. And, along the lines of how you guys push each other and have so much fun with each other, what's it like to be in that clubhouse where from the top of the staff to the end of the bullpen that you can go to any guy and get better?
Yeah, I mean, we definitely have a lot of smart, experience, players on this team, and I've been kind of, leaning on them because, I'm only in my first full season of pro ball, so yeah, we have, a really good team, like I said, and just, really good guys. So I feel like I can, go up to them anytime, ask questions and, just, how are you doing this? How are you holding this? They ask the same to me, or like hitters. I'm like, hey, what are you thinking when you're in the box? Like, what I mean, it's just, just try to learn from each other, and, we just have a really good environment that allows us to, do that a lot, and I think that can only, benefit us positively.
Well, along the lines of success, you yourself are on a string right now. You've thrown 20 consecutive scoreless innings, but it's a lot more complicated than that. You've made some great pitches to get yourself out of situations. You've also made some not-so-great pitches to put yourself in those situations. But the entire time, it appears that you feel unnerved. And how do you not let the emotions of a big strikeout or the emotions of a 4-pitch walk get in your way of what you're doing out there?
I think it's just the mindset of there's more to be done. When you're doing well, there's always more. And when you're not doing well, you got to get it done. There's always something to be done. So it's not a time to pout, or it's not a time to jump for joy. Like, there's always more to be done. And so I think you just got to win every pitch. And so there's really not a lot of time for that. I mean, obviously you're going to enjoy the small victories, and you have to deal with the small defeats. But ultimately, there's always more to be done. And to win every pitch, you have to be focused, and you have to be composed and poised. And I just try to do that to my best of my ability to provide confidence for the team behind me. Because if they see me moping around the mound or going crazy or things like that, I don't know if they're going to have a positive reaction to that. And so I think I just want to be cool and collected, and just make them feel steady behind me.
By the way, when was the last time you walked a guy on 4 pitches?
I've done it.
It's got to be a long time.
Yeah. I normally don't do that. I did it. I did it in my pro debut down in the GCL. Actually, okay. I walked a guy on 4 pitches, and that was weird. But I've done it 4 times this year. I really, I hate walking people, and doing it on 4 pitches is just pretty uncharacteristic, and it really upsets me. But
well, you seem to wiggle out of it, so it turned out all right.
Yeah, luckily, just getting a ground ball or something after that, being able to get out of that is good. But, I got to stop doing that.
Well, having the defense that you have behind you has been such a safety blanket, especially in the game against Akron. Got a big double play to get out of that 6th inning. Sergio Alcantara made a diving play early in the game to help you, not allow those runs. What's it like knowing that you have those guys behind you that even if you're not at your best, that they're there to back you up?
I mean, it's necessary, honestly, because, right now I'm just getting a lot of ground balls, and I'm, a lot of balls put in play. And, those guys, when you throw a pitch to a hitter and you see him beat it to the ground, and you just know it's almost automatic, it's a pretty good feeling. You mentioned those plays. Cole Peterson made a really nice double play. Alcantara, all the way around, defense is doing really well. And the thing I've been most impressed with is, how successfully we're shifting teams. Mm-hmm. I've noticed that it's just like a ball that maybe a line drive, like the line drive that Alcantara caught up the middle. That's probably getting through. In my pat, I've never been on a team that shifted this much, and I've never seen it benefit me more than it has now. There's been so many successful shifts, and it's helped me out a ton. And so just the defensive alignment goes along with just the defensive talent, and they've done a really good job of that. So hopefully they can keep that up and keep backing me up. Another
safety blanket you have is behind home plate, and we've talked about this, but the influx of veteran leadership behind home plate with now Kate Savick and Chase Numata. You obviously had Jake Rogers earlier, but these are all guys that have had years in the game and that know what they're doing behind home plate. What's it like forming a relationship with them and using that to have success on the field?
Yeah, it's good. And, the 2 guys we have now, Cade and Numi, and the thing is they're completely different. Cade, just provides you with so much confidence back there. He's pounding his mitt, he's telling you where to, throw the ball. He's, telling you good job and you're doing well. Numi's doing that as well, but it's just Cade is very charismatic and just provides you a lot of confidence and just gets you going, while Numi is very relaxed and very reserved. And so it's a different feel, which I really like both. There's a time and a place for both of those things. So it's really cool to have those 2 different dynamics, and just because you're going to come along, catchers that are going to be different, throughout your whole career. And so I think just being able to throw to different kinds of catchers, and they're different size catchers, and it's just things like that you have to learn and you have to be able to be comfortable with. And so it's been a really cool experience for me to throw to those guys, because I know they've been playing pro ball for a few years now. And so they have a lot of knowledge, and I've just kind of been leaning on them, and they call a great game. They catch a great game all around. They're just really good teammates, and they've been a really big benefit for me, and along with the other staff as well.
Absolutely. Chatting here with Casey Mize, Erie Seawolves starting pitcher, and One of the things that I have to imagine you've also been introduced to since coming from the college ranks, or perhaps even while there, is the analytical side of the game and how that has helped you grow. I mean, I've heard you discuss previously the type of things you do in the off season, but just the introduction of technology is such a big benefit to the game now. How have you been able to use it to improve yourself?
Yeah, like you said, I had a really big focus on it. I'm still learning, so I'm not like,
Absolutely.
Too knowledgeable on it. I really want to be, so that's going to be something I continue to improve upon this off season. But this first off season was my really big introduction to it. We had a little bit of the technology at Auburn. We had TrackMan and Rapsodo. Rapsodo is more for pitch design, and TrackMan is stats from more of a game setting where you can look at some spin rates and release heights and extensions and obviously velocity and other things like that. So I think there's different uses for different tools. And this offseason, the Rapsodo and Edgertronic camera, it's a very slow-mo camera, which allows you to see the release out of your hand of the ball, the launch, and things like that. So I used all that stuff, and I find it very beneficial, especially in the offseason. Now, like I said, I'm leaning more towards the TrackMan just because it's actually game related and game feedback, because I think that's the most important thing right now. Like, now is not the time for me to try to develop a pitch. I think I just go with what I got. And so just being able to rely on that, and it has been such a big benefit. I just feel like the information's there, and if you're not using it, then you're behind. I think it's because everybody's leaning on it and using it as a resource, and I feel like if I especially was not using it, then I'm missing out and I'm behind. So I definitely use it. I don't dive into too much of it during season. We get a lot of numbers on opposing teams' hitters and their hot zones and their last 10 games. How they're hitting. Against right-handed pitchers that throw 94, 95. So those things are all beneficial. But the challenge is you see all these things, but you want to stick to your strength as well. Like, this right-handed hitter struggles with hitting breaking balls late in the count. Well, the thing is, I throw splitters late in the count, so I don't want to go too far away from, my strengths to throw to a hitter's weakness. Like, why would I throw my fourth best pitch when I could feel way more comfortable throwing my best pitch just because he can't hit the fourth? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's a balancing act of what they can't do and what I can do and what I feel more comfortable with doing. So it's cool to kind of challenge yourself and, see what works and, see when you have to make that adjustment to what I do to what they can't do. Because when I try to do what I do and they hit it for a double, and then I got to move on to what they can't do. You know what I mean? So it's cool to use all that information for pitch design and to see what hitters can do and can't do. And I think it's just been a really big benefit to our game as a whole.
Seeing your process not only before games but just throughout the week, you're very methodical, and so you spoke about in season how it's tough to make those adjustments and really mess with things that you're currently doing. But when did you become open to these things?
I think at Auburn. I think just when I was introduced to it, I was very fortunate to be around a lot of not knowledgeable coaches and staff members and just people that really wanted to help and benefit me. So I think just when I started learning things from them at Auburn, I think I just decided all of these things can benefit me, and I'm going to be open to change. I think that's kind of where that started. I didn't really have much of a plan before going to Auburn, and then I established that plan at Auburn. And then now in my off-season work and training with my agency, I've really established, a really good baseline of what I need to do to prepare each week and what I need to do to feel right to go out and compete to my best ability every 5 days. And coming to the Tigers, they were really open to what I do. I think they really like what I do. And I've implemented, a couple of their things, here and there, and I think that's been beneficial as well. And so, like you said, you have to be open to change. You got to be open to try new things. I'm always one to, just try things out if I think it's going to be beneficial. And if it's not, then, it's just not for me. But I'm not the one to say, hey, what I do is right, what you do is wrong, and I'm not even going to attempt that. I think I'm going to respect everyone's wishes and just at least give it a chance. And if it's not, for me, then it's just not for me, and I try to rebuttal, and I try to, what if I did this instead because I feel more comfortable with this, and it's just really learning. I think the first step, was just learning what made me feel good, because I think that's ultimately, the most important thing. Like what's going to make me feel confident enough to go out there and compete, and then it's probably going to change over time. You know, what
Yeah.
I do now, I might not be doing in a year. I might not be doing in 5 years. You know what I mean? It's going to change. So the ability to adapt and change is obviously very important. And I look forward to continuing to learning things that can benefit me.
Well, speaking about your boys, congrats on them moving on.
Yep, thank you. I was watching that yesterday. Happy for them. So very cool. Back-to-back super regionals for the first time in program history. So very proud of them. I know. They've had a crazy year. They had some injuries and some ups and some downs, but in the end, they're playing really good ball right now, and so I'm really happy for them.
Is it crazy to think that you were there a year ago right now?
Yep. Yeah. I was watching games and I was like, man, like I remember being in Raleigh, North Carolina. I remember like celebrating with the team after we won and taking pictures on the field. I mean, like, man, it doesn't seem like a year ago. It really doesn't. And I mean, I hope they're enjoying this because I sure did, and it's a really good time in their life, and so I definitely miss it. But like I said, I hope they're enjoying it.
And obviously, that community has rallied around you with what you've been able to accomplish. And you see on social media people compare you to Frank Thomas, Tim Hudson, Greg Olson, all these great former Tiger players. And as a guy who's a year removed from that, do you more so accept those comparisons or use them as fuel?
I don't know. I think probably more fuel, because the thing is, those guys have already accomplished so much. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like they've already done what everything. You can read about it. You can there's so much more for me to do. You know what I mean? Like so. I don't take those comparisons as what's already been done. I think, hey, he could be in this conversation, professionally. I've done some things at the college level they were able to accomplish, which is awesome to be even considered that. But professionally, there's obviously much more for me to do. I mean, I haven't played a big league inning yet. Yeah. They've Frank Thomas is a Hall of Famer. Tim Hudson, is Tim Hudson, played in the year for 20 league for 20 years. Whatever. So he. I mean, just to even be in conversation with those guys is very cool. But obviously, there's much more to be done.
You did a lot and were a part of a lot during your 3 years at Auburn. And I'm wondering, whether it be from an individual or team perspective, there's something that particularly stands out to you about what you were able to accomplish.
I think it's the team perspective. I think our first year we won 22 games. So we played 56 games. So I think we went like 22-34 or something like that. So not good. And we didn't even make the SEC tournament. That was Coach Thompson's first year. He came in the middle of the fall. So it was that was a tough year, but he forced me to basically go out there and throw in some really important innings that I thought were very important. And I failed a lot. And so I think that year was so beneficial to me just because it fueled me, man. I didn't want to be, just some pitcher on the worst team in the league. Like, I wanted to be that Friday night guy. Like, the guys who pitch on Friday night are, like, the best. So,
Logan Shores of the world.
Exactly. Logan Shore, Alex Faedo. I think Logan Shore is, like, the perfect example of that because he did it for 3 years, very well. So I wanted to be that. And I think just that failure that I was forced to face, and I just think, really made me mad. And I really just wanted to get better. And so I think just that and then now looking back, like, we went to a regional final the next year, and then the next year we went to super regionals, and we were a run away from Omaha. We lost to Florida. So I think just seeing how far we came as a team and how much that affected me personally, I think was awesome. We got so much better as a team. Had 2 really great years my last 2 years, and the first year just made me grow up and made me really just know that I had to be better, and it really fueled me for those last 2 years, and ultimately led me where I am today. So I think on both sides, individually and as a team, it was just an amazing transformation, honestly. So I owe a lot to that university and that baseball program and Coach Thompson. So it was awesome.
You can tell just from hearing you talk about that, along with having seen you pitch, that you're a pretty competitive guy. At what point did you feel like the competitiveness had to take a backseat to what the team was doing? I mean, obviously you have individual success, and you want to make sure that you're at your best for your team each and every time. But sometimes being too competitive can get in the way of that. And I'm wondering if that was the point from your freshman to sophomore year where you felt like you took that leap.
Yeah. So I think the good example of that is, like, you're pitching and you're cruising, and you go to like the 7th inning, and you have a pretty tough 7th inning, and you barely get out of the 7th inning, and you're at 100 pitches, and you want to go back out there for the 8th competitively, but hey, I'm pretty tired. I'm not throwing my best pitches, and they're putting some good swings on balls. So that's where you have to decide what's best for the team, bringing somebody else in or me going out there selfishly trying to get through another inning. You know what I mean? So you have to put competitiveness aside for a second and realize what's going to put us in a better situation to win this game. Me going out there and just struggling to get some outs, bringing in a fresh arm and, trying to, get quick work of this lineup for these next 3 outs. So I think that's kind of a good example of that, and I really had to learn that, I think. I think it's just not being selfish and putting team first and realizing there's more to what you're trying to accomplish, and whatever puts your team in the best position to win, I think is ultimately the most important thing.
And selflessness is very important, especially in pro ball, because there's a lot of things that you can't control. Yeah. And in talking about how your team improved from a losing season to the point where you got during your 3rd year, now into pro ball, there's the emphasis on development, and sometimes winning can occasionally take a back seat. Now, you yourself have been very good in your starts and can control that outcome. But has it been tough going from a place where at Auburn you became accustomed to winning now to the Tiger system where winning isn't always at the forefront? It sometimes takes a backseat to development.
Yeah, it's different for sure. Like my last start, I went 8 innings, or 2 starts ago went 8 innings. Last start, I went 6. And after the fact, the coaching staff told me, hey, you were probably coming out after 6 innings right there no matter what. And it's because I threw so much the start before. Like they don't want to, compound, heavy load on top of each other. And so I think that's kind of different, like in college, you just keep cruising. Like if you're pitching well, you're going to pitch deep into a game and you just keep rolling, because you're going to try to win every game you can. And here it's just more, this is what you needed, this week, and you only needed to throw 6 innings or 5 innings to just get some work done and get you a start in, but not push too much. And so that's been different. And then, sometimes you're in the 4th inning and I have only thrown 2 splitters. And then, you come back in and MJ, Mark Johnson, our pitching coach, is like, hey, man, you got to throw more splitters. Like I don't care what the count is, if it's a right-handed hitter, left-handed hitter, I really don't care. You got to throw a few this inning. And so you have to do that. When in college, you just, whatever gets outs is whatever I'm going to do, So there is definitely a more development piece, which is pretty crazy. It's honestly a lot different. I like it. I mean,
challenging, though.
It is. It's challenging. It's like if, the breaking ball is not working that day, it's got to be working. You know what I mean? You have to throw it 10 more times. You can't can it this early. You have to develop that pitch, and you have to get it, as consistent as possible. So guess what? You can't shake. You got to throw it. So that's different. Like I said, in college, if the breaking ball's not there, that's okay. I mean, just just try to throw your other pitches and see how many outs you can get until you got to bring it back out. When here, you got to throw all your stuff, and you got to work on things, and you got to. It's different, So that's the point of development and competitiveness, So you got a hitter, 1-2 count, and that curveball that hasn't been there all day, but that splitter that has, well, I probably need to throw the breaking ball to see if, you know what I mean, like to try to get, the shape on it and try to get this guy out and just show that, I found some feel for it. And so that's kind of been the challenge, but it's been kind of cool because it forces you to really focus, in preparation, in between starts, because you don't want to go out there without a pitch and then get stuck in that situation, and then you have to throw a breaking ball, and then it doesn't feel good, and then they smack it for a double, and now you're in a tough situation. So you try to just make sure, when I go out there every 5th day, I'm gonna have everything. So it's been pretty cool. It just makes you focus more in between starts.
It sounds a little paradoxical, but do you feel like the biggest stride that you have made is having to prepare for the unexpected, that you are going to go out there and be tasked with, throwing X amount of these pitches, trying to attack hitters in this certain way, when sometimes you may not feel that that's the best way to go after a guy? Yeah.
I mean, that's definitely the challenge. It's crazy because, like I said, in college, you give up 3 runs in the first, give up 2 in the second, like you're probably coming out of the game. Mm-hmm. Here, if you got 80 pitches today, you're going to throw 80 pitches. I don't care how many runs you give up. You know what I mean? There are some regulations with that. You can't throw a certain amount in one inning or whatever. But you're going to get your work in, and you have to work on these things, and you have to be more process-oriented than outcome-oriented. You know what I mean? Like, you have to throw that fastball down in the zone because you got to work on it. And if they smack it, guess what? You're going to throw it to the next guy too. You know what I mean? So you can't focus too much on the outcome while you're working on that process. It's kind of been the challenge. And I think it's only going to benefit me in the long run, working on these things and doing that. I've seen that with some of the other pitchers, working on changeups or working on fastball command or working on this, working on that. And you see, not like the fans don't notice when so-and-so gives up a double. Well, he was working on his changeup right there. Yep. I can tell that. Yeah, I know he threw a 1-0 changeup right there because he was working on it, not because he wanted to. He's got a really good fastball, but he's working on his changeup, and I could tell. And everybody in that dugout kind of knows what's going on, but everybody else that's watching can't really see that. You know what I mean? So that's the underlying stuff that is difficult when your stat line reads you gave up 3 runs, but it's okay. At the end of the day, I threw some good breaking balls because. The one I threw that he hit for a homer, it kind of ticked me off, and I threw some really good ones after that. You know what I mean? So that's kind of been the biggest difference.
Baseball's a fickle sport, man.
It is.
Well, I appreciate you getting this far, and I just have a couple more questions for you. We're going to just throw them at you kind of rapid fire and see what happens.
Okay.
All right, so I heard that you said that Derek Jeter was your favorite player growing up.
Yep.
What attracted you to the captain as opposed to someone like Chipper Jones or any Atlanta Brave legend?
My mom was a Yankees fan. She loved Derek Jeter. I think it's because she thought he was good looking or something. But so we didn't really like the Braves that much growing up. I was always a Yankees fan, and Derek Jeter was the captain of that team, and they were winning World Series, and he was a really good player. So it was just Jeter for me.
All right. So I know that you're a big HBO guy.
Yep.
Have to imagine Game of Thrones fan.
Yep.
Who would have been your pick to take the Iron Throne? Because we all know it shouldn't have been Bran.
No, should not have been Bran. That was awful. The worst character in the show. The thing is, I say that a lot. I'm really upset with how it ended, and I didn't want Bran to be on the Iron Throne, but I really don't have a solid answer for who I'd want. I guess Jon. I mean, he's the rightful heir, and he's just the best leader on the show. So I guess I got to say Jon. I mean, he's got his head on straight, and he's, like I said, one of the best leaders, if not the best. So I think he would have been, fit for the job. So I say Jon Snow.
Can't refute that.
Yeah.
All right. If I was driving through Springville, what would be the restaurant that I have to stop and eat at?
Oh, I don't even know if we have.
Or the place that I have to go when I stop through.
Yeah. We have this little Italian place right downtown. Downtown as in Main Street. We have one street, but.
Still a street.
Yeah, I forget what it's called. It's a little Italian place. You got to park in this little parking lot and kind of walk. I don't know. It's weird, but there's a little Italian place in there. It's pretty good. I'll get the name for you later, but I forget what it is. Yeah.
All right. If you could have one superpower, what would it be?
Teleportation. It is the best superpower, just because you can do everything. I mean, you can be rich. Have you ever seen the movie Jumper?
Yep.
Yeah, you can rob banks. You can be super rich. You don't have to travel. Traffic is not a thing. You got to be somewhere at 8 o'clock. You can literally get dressed 5 minutes before and be there. I don't know. I think you save a lot of time, and I think that would be. A lot of people say invisibility when I say teleportation. I'm like, well,
I want to be seen.
If you're that too. And if you're invisible, you still have to physically travel. And that takes time. So just teleport there. I think that would be the coolest thing.
Okay, well then on the Jumper side, if you have pictures on your wall, which are the places that you want to go?
Ooh, where would I want to go? I really want to go to Ireland. I don't know why. I just want to see the open fields, and I kind of just want to go there really bad. But my fiance's been to the Amalfi Coast in Italy, so I'd like to go to I'd like to go there as well. Maybe Everest. I'd like to go to Mount Everest too. That'd be pretty cool just to hop up there for a little bit.
Like Mount Kilimanjaro or something like that?
Yeah, just see all these.
Top of the world?
Yeah, awesome sights. That'd be really cool.
Congratulations on the engagement, by the way.
Oh, thanks.
All right, next one for you. If you had a pregame playlist, or perhaps you do, what is on that playlist?
Yeah, I do have one. It's called my Feel Good playlist. I don't listen to music that just gets me pumped up or gets me really excited. I just listen to music that makes me feel good. That's it's just a lot of different things. The song Ooh La La by The Faces?
Yeah.
That makes me feel good. There's just a lot of different songs. I'm trying to there's a couple.
Let's bring out the iPhone.
Yeah, let me see. There's playlist, feel good. Let's see. Oh, Best Day Ever, Mac Miller. I mean, that's a good one.
R.I.P.
R.I.P. Burn the House Down, Budapest by George Ezra. Come On Eileen, it's a good one. Let's let's see, For a Better Day by Avicii.
Yeah.
A little Vance Joy, I like him. Kings of Summer. Let's see, like some Major Lazer stuff. I don't know, just Midnight City, M83. Just a lot of music that makes me feel good. Just puts me in a good mood. Yeah, I mean, that's really my kind of playlist. So that's usually what I listen to before games.
I like it. All right. What does the term Southern hospitality mean to you?
I think that's just being very welcoming, being very respectful. Just in basically, like, if you're a stranger, just welcome to my home. You know, just come on in. You know, kick your shoes off. You know, walk in. You know, enjoy yourself and just feel welcome and feel respected always. I think that's kind of just being very nice to people. I think luckily I grew up in the South, and you know I grew up that way, and it's pretty cool to, you know, go back down when I haven't been there in a while and just remember just how nice everybody is and how welcoming. It's just a good feeling. It just makes people feel really good. So I think those things.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right, final question. On a scale of 1 to 10, how cool is Casey Mize?
Oh, I don't know. Right in the middle. I think like 6. I don't think I'm very cool. I think I'm just pretty plain, like pretty average guy. Like Matt Manning, Faedo, those guys are really cool. I'm kind of just like, eh. But I'd probably say like a 6.
They'd probably say the same thing about you, man.
We'll see. I hope so.
Well, we appreciate you being inviting, respectful, awesome, and being a great guest on this podcast. Thank you so much for coming on, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Very fun.
So once again, many thanks go out to Casey Mize, who was not only kind enough to take the time, but also engage in a conversation that I think reveals a lot about the grounded individual that he is, and is very telling of why he has already achieved a high level of success with much more on the way. As for what's coming up next, be on the lookout for episode 6 coming your way next week. We'll have an update for you in a couple of days. And in the meantime, check out your Seawolves on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And of course, all the great things going down at UPMC Park, if not this weekend, then the next. You can find everything you need on Seawolves.com, and you can also listen to all 140 games on Fox Sports Radio, AM 1330 The Fan, the TuneIn app, or watch live on MILB.TV. Hope you all have an amazing rest of your weekend, and we'll catch you next time.